Hello and welcome to the Formula Scout podcast. For the first time since 2004, a champion was crowned on the Grand Prix weekend with the surname Schumacher. A Formula 2 thriller in the desert culminated in a decider that was predictably unpredictable. To discuss this, a double in the desert for Carlin, as well as a second Ferrari Academy member being crowned this weekend, and more in what has been a frantic week in the world of junior single-seater racing and in Formula 1 itself, is myself, Craig Willard, Elliot Wood, and Bethany Waring. We will kick off with Formula 2, and what a decider it was. 5 drivers came into this weekend in contention for the championship. The most remote of those was Yuki Tsunoda. He required a perfect weekend to stand even a chance of becoming champion. He clinched pole position and as such eliminated Robert Schwartzman from proceedings. Schumacher, meanwhile, crashed into Nasadi during qualifying, which is something that we would not have been saying 15 years ago. Callum Ilott also struggled, taking his second worst grid position of the year. Tsunoda went on to brilliantly win the feature race, but both he and Nikita Mazepin were eliminated from the title fight on Sunday. We'll be speaking more about Mazepin shortly. Meanwhile, the 14-point gap between Schumacher and Ilott remained stagnant, as both picked up the same number of points in the feature race. Neither driver in the title hunt had a particularly worthwhile race in the finale. Schumacher locked up considerably on the opening lap in turn 4 and locked up several times further as he finished a lowly 18th. While Ilott also struggled to make significant progress, dropped back himself during the race and also finished outside of the points. Jehan Daruvala capped off a tough season with a fine win after an epic scrap with Dan Ticktum, while Tsunoda finished second to end up third in the championship just behind Ilott and clinched the super license points he needs to reach Formula 1 for 2021. He also took the Antoine Hubert Award for being the top rookie. So, guys, Mick Schumacher, a worthy champion?
I won't make the same joke I did when you weren't recording, but yeah, I would say he is a worthy champion. I feel more satisfied with. I'd say he is too more satisfied with his Formula 2 championship campaign than his Formula 3 one. He has been at the sharp end of the field the entire season, rather than just the last half. So I'd say yeah, he's made some mistakes. For sure he's made some mistakes, but I don't think anybody in that F2 field hasn't made any mistakes. So yeah, he did it. And I'm not going to comment on Michael Schumacher, the legality of some of Michael Schumacher's moves either, but he did. But Mick Schumacher did it legally, which is important.
Elliot?
Yeah, he's deserving champion. I don't think, well, like I already said, I wasn't really impressed with how he or Ilott drove this weekend. Both of them kind of started up the order and then slid down in today's race. But overall, over the season, it's hard to say any other driver was stronger than Schumacher. It might have been level with Schumacher, but can't really think of anyone who was particularly better than him. So yeah, deserving champion.
I certainly think that there are comparisons to draw between his championship campaign and the championship campaign that Oscar Piastri had in FIA Formula 3. Neither took a front row start at all throughout the year. Neither was, absolutely storming when it came to taking race victories, but they were always there in the mix at the front of the pack when it mattered. So I think that having that consistency in a series as frantic as Formula 2 or FIA Formula 3 is what clinches championships at the end of the day, rather than necessarily having the out-and-out speed. We know now that he's off to Formula 1 with Haas. He'll be one of the drivers replacing Romain Grosjean and Kevin Magnussen. Nikita Mazepin is the other one. So let's talk a little bit about the qualities that Schumacher will be bringing to a team like Haas. Elliot, I know that I've gone extensively into a feature on this, which you fixed for me. But what are the qualities that you think Schumacher will bring to Haas next year that perhaps the current incumbents won't?
Well, in your piece, you picked up on basically the characters that Haas already has and the character Schumacher and how they're slightly contrasting, and it will perhaps help Haas build more into a more rounded F1 team by having someone like Schumacher who's very, very calm very, very cool. Kind of has to be because of the pressure he's been under, all of his life. But apart from that, good. I think linking to Piastri is, I think, Schumacher's strongest quality. When Schumacher qualifies down the grid, which he often does, he's not particularly brilliant in qualifying. He's very good at starts in the F2 car, and he's very good at making up places and generally not getting into trouble when he's starting down the order. And that's pretty much what Piastri did as well, going up to F2. So I think Schumacher is going to be in a very packed midfield next year, going off what the current year's F1 cars are. And he'll be fine. I don't think he'll be involved in like lap one crashes or anything like that. He'll be able to get points because he stays out of trouble. Whereas someone like Nikita Mazepin, his teammate, perhaps won't.
And Bethany, I was going to ask you about Mazepin. His driving came under immense scrutiny this weekend. He tallied up 11 penalty points for the year, which is very perilously close to a race ban as Mahavir Raghunathan got last year. But what driver do you think Haas will be getting with Nikita Mazepin?
Well, I guess they're kind of used to having a driver on the edge of a ban, so that's good. I feel like they'll get one that's not going to give up. He won't settle for where he is. We saw that today. He did everything to get that position, and hopefully Haas can kind of knock some, yes, do that, but do it on the track into him. But he's very aggressive. He's a very aggressive driver. He was not bad in qualifying, and I think he learned a lot from his previous year to this year, which I've been highlighting a lot this week, of drivers who learn a lot generally do really well in their second year. So hopefully he can learn a lot in the jump to Haas, and then from Haas year 1 to Haas year 2.
I certainly think that with no nonsense Netflix star Günther Steiner behind everything, I think that Mazepin will be able to become a slightly more rounded driver. I see a lot of Kevin Magnussen in Mazepin, to be honest, in terms of sort of like his absolute aggression, his no nonsense approach to racing, and a lot of the things that he tends to say to the media as well. But yeah, it's certainly interesting that Haas has gone for a completely rookie lineup, and picking Schumacher and Mazepin. We certainly speculated earlier in the year that Schumacher would have been off to Alfa Romeo, but obviously Antonio Giovinazzi's performances have been strong enough to warrant Ferrari keeping him in that particular seat, and the performances of the other Ferrari Academy members have not been to the standard that Ferrari would have perhaps hoped. Let's also talk about Yuki Tsunoda, because we expect an announcement imminently that he'll be making his Formula One debut next year with AlphaTauri. He also won the Antoine Hubert Award, as mentioned earlier, for being the top rookie. He also took the Pirelli Award, as voted for by the media, including Formula Scout, for being the so-called tyre whisperer, if you will. But Elliot, how impressed were you with Tsunoda in particular this year, given that it's just his second year racing in Europe, and he certainly was not a driver that we necessarily expected to go and finish third, only 1 point behind second place.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons coming into the season we didn't expect too much of him was because his English wasn't particularly strong. In his first year, he didn't build much of a repertoire of English vocabulary because he was with a German team and a Swiss team. And although they used English as their first language, casually they're all speaking other languages. Whereas being with Carlin this year, he fully immersed himself pre-season. Obviously, lockdown really extended before the time he actually got to go racing, but that meant he could learn more English. He's still a bit broken when he talks to us in press conferences and etc. But that just aids his communication with the team. It means he can get us to a closer setup. And like you said, being voted for the tyre whisperer, the only reason he is so strong on the tyres is because he can give more accurate, more precise feedback now to the team, and they can work on, changing setup points. I think as well, I remember very particularly last year when him and Liam Lawson crashed at Spa-Francorchamps while fighting for the lead. One of the drivers was sitting down crying for quite a while. The other, went off to the team boss, got the bollocking they were going to get, and then just went straight back to work. and that's the Yuki I've seen this year as well. And his team have pretty much confirmed that. Spoken to Matt Ogle, very impressed by him. In regards to next year, though, I have it on confirmation that he will be driving at Suzuka next year in a Red Bull liveried car. Whether that's in Super Formula or Formula One, we don't actually know yet.
Yes, very true. He has already said on social media that he'll be driving around Suzuka in 2021, and he hopes lots of Japanese fans will come out. But as we mentioned, we don't know in which category. But yeah, certainly a very, very impressive and rounded season, and a driver who I think we're going to be hearing a lot from this year. In an interview with Sky Sports, Trevor Carlin also said that in Tsunoda they've got the next driver like Takuma Sato. Obviously, when you look just beyond the nationality as well, with Sato, he no attack, no chance is his mantra, and that paid dividends for him in Formula One and in his IndyCar career as well. So let's talk a little bit about the outer loop that was used by Formula One and Formula Two this weekend. Bethany, do you think it was a good addition to the calendar? And do you think shorter circuits are the sort of thing that we should be promoting in these categories?
It was very fun. I think shorter circuits, in a way, is good because then, like we saw in F1, you have a chance to, if you don't come into the pit straight away, you kind of have a chance to come into on your second lap which wouldn't necessarily you would have had the opportunity to do if it had been a proper length. I enjoyed the race. I enjoyed all the races this weekend. I enjoyed the outer loop, the ditto shaped track. It was very bumpy, which obviously gave it character, which some drivers didn't like. I feel I'm not sure if all the races we've had this season that have been the most exciting have been on tracks we don't normally go to. So I'm not sure if maybe these are exciting races because the drivers haven't driven 700 laps on them before, or if they're genuinely good circuits. But I enjoyed this. I'd like to see it back. I preferred Bahrain 2.0 better than Bahrain 1.0. So we'll hopefully... It would just be nice to have something different if they could maybe alternate it between the two Bahrains every year or something. I don't know. I'm not a track designer.
No, I don't think any of us are Herman Tilke. Elliot, what are your thoughts? Did you see sort of comparisons in that to something sort of like NASCAR or IndyCar with the style of racing that we had?
Definitely, and I think the popularity as well. IndyCar's popularity waned when it dropped short ovals, and same with NASCAR from the calendar. They've been there for literally 100 years, and I think we've seen finally a short track in Formula One and Formula Two, and you can see what it does to a race. It makes it spectacular, and obviously the pit stop offset in Formula Two, only the feature race has the pit stop, but the timing of the pit stop is so much longer compared to the length of the lap, so it makes strategy all the more costly if you get pit stop wrong. You can have lapped traffic. Surprised how little of it we had actually in F2 this weekend, which shows how competitive the field is. Some people do like to bash the slower drivers, but when the only driver who did get lapped in the feature race actually ended up unlapping himself and annoying the leaders, then it does show how good the field is. I think, like Bethany said though, it's a point of a lack of data as well. You don't know what's the best setup for the circuit, and free practice, as many F2 drivers will tell you, is useless. Qualifying is brilliant to get your laps in to start the race, but otherwise it doesn't give you enough data to go into the races with. So that feature race was the first time the drivers really drove the track as it would be, and it created excitement as a result.
And practice time is a topic we'll bring up in a future podcast, I think. But we also have F1 graduates making their debuts this weekend that I think we should talk about, including 2020 Formula 2 podium finisher Jack Aitken, who made his debut with Williams in place of George Russell, who drove the Mercedes in place of a COVIDed Lewis Hamilton. And we also had Pietro Fittipaldi make his debut with Haas. So, Bethany, Pietro Fittipaldi,
Yeah.
what did you make of his Grand Prix debut?
We didn't see much of him, but he started it, which is better than some of the races I've been to. He didn't crash and he finished the race, so he did better than 3 drivers with immensely more Grand Prix starts than he had. The only time I remember Fittipaldi being mentioned during the race was when he had a 5-second pit stop, which fair enough, he didn't run over anyone over, and when George Russell came out just behind him. But considering Fittipaldi's not raced anything since February, not raced Formula 2, hasn't raced Formula 3 level car, well, European Formula 3 level car in years, considering the weirdest path to Formula 1 I've seen in ages, bar Brendan Hartley, I think he did well to keep it on track, to not finish 30 years behind everyone else. And it was just an experience, really. I don't think anyone really expected him to go up there and finish 5th. And he did what Haas needed him to do, which was to keep the car in one piece. And hopefully next weekend he'll have a weekend under his belt, so we can hopefully get the next milestone of not being the last finisher, which would just be nice, wouldn't it? It's just a nice story.
Yeah, it would be the first third generation Formula One driver ever, the 4th Fittipaldi to race in Formula One, the 5th driver from his family, when you include Max Pappas, who's his uncle as well. So definitely a rich history. And it was also his first race, I believe, on Pirelli tyres, or like the degrading Pirelli tyres. I'm not entirely sure. But another driver who made his debut was Aitken, who sadly did not keep it out of the barriers. And brought out the safety car in the Formula One race that turned the race on its head.
And I saw a tweet that said if George Russell's Williams had finished the race, George Russell's Mercedes would have won it, which kind of, yeah.
That sums up quite nicely. But Aitken did quite well, I thought, on his Grand Prix debut weekend. He outqualified a couple of cars, which was very impressive indeed, I felt. He was only fractions behind regular driver Nicholas Latifi, who was thrust into the team leader role this weekend, and was running quite well. He had a decent scrap with Kimi Raikkonen, the most experienced driver in Formula One history, early in the race, but sadly lost it coming out of turn 10 and just clipped the edge of the barrier and sheared off the front wing. Which set a lot of events that Mercedes will not want us to repeat. To put it that way. But whilst we're also here, we've got Formula 2 moves to talk about, because we haven't spoken about who's driving in Formula 2 next year. We've got testing next week, well, in the coming week. So do keep an eye out for announcements on formulascout.com. But the first big one is Formula 3 champion Oscar Piastri to Prema. Bethany, is this kind of expected, do you think?
I don't know what else you're going to do after you won Formula 3. I feel like the FIA have made it that what if you want to get to Formula 1, you've got to do Formula 2, Formula 3. I've had this discussion at great length about when discussing Fittipaldi's career into Formula 1, but the FIA made it now that you've got to do, realistically, you've got to do Formula 2, Formula 3, frack and everything else. So I don't see what else Piastri would do. And with Prema, he's been with Prema for years, I think. He's been with Prema definitely 1 year and won with them. So why change?
Yeah, it's a very valid point. And Prema obviously secured the team's championship this weekend as well. Elliot.
They're pretty good, Prema.
Yeah, generally, pretty handy. Elliot, Ralph Boschung is back, and he's with Campos. You pleased to see him back?
No comment. To be honest, I can't remember anything about his Formula 2 career so far. Like, he's had such an anonymous career. He won that GP3 race back in 2015, maybe, or 2016. And then he's had 3 years around the back of the pack in F2, or 2 years. Yeah, 3 years, 2017, 18, 19. Then he sat out this year. He was adamant he would return. Every time he leaves, he always says he will return. He's not going to get to F1. He's spending, at least, he's keeping these teams alive by spending money on the seats. But I don't see why he wants to stay committed to F2. It's not even like Sean Galal, who, occasionally gets podiums once every year and a half. Boschung's been nowhere near that. Having said that, this weekend, he actually, jumped in the car, didn't look out of touch with it at all. And it was obviously his first time on the new 20-inch or
18.
18-inch wheels. And he did all right. But at the same time, I don't think he's going to get more than all right. He'll just, hover around the 14th place mark for a year in 2021.
Yeah, he took a little while to get up to speed, but it wasn't too long before he was outpacing regular back marker Guilherme Samaia. We've also got Felipe Drugovich, who, Elliot, you believe is off to Virtuosi to replace Callum Ilott.
Yeah, from what I understand, he'll be moving to Virtuosi definitely for the post-season test, which is next week, December the 8th, December the 10th. Then highly likely they'll be moving there for the whole entirety of the 2021 season. I've seen another paddock colleague report on that as well now, so fairly sure my sources are backed up by their sources, and that's going to be the way through. Guan Yu Zhou will be staying alongside him. Of the other title front runners, Schwartzman will be partnering Piastri at Prema as well. Obviously, Prema didn't qualify on pole at all this year, whereas Virtuosi took 5 or 6 poles with Callum Ilott. So
5.
I think Drugovich has made the right move there for trying to win the title in 2021.
Yeah, certainly. And he's another driver who had a very impressive rookie campaign with all the winning that he's done. Dan Ticktum is a driver who confirmed today after the sprint race that he will be returning to Formula 2, but he did not say explicitly who the team was, but he did say in the press conference that the team was quick this weekend. So you can add some numbers together. You might sometimes get 5, but if you're adding the right numbers together, you're going to get 4. And we all know which team we're on about. It's Carlin.
Yeah, and
By the time this podcast goes out, he might have already announced it.
Yeah, well, he said he was going to announce it tomorrow for the 2021 program. We'd already reported on him joining them for the test. The last time I spoke to him and spoke to his team, they haven't actually suggested he has the budget for 2021 yet. So I want to get some more updates on, where that's coming in. And I think quite a few of the F2 drivers are close to announcing deals, but haven't actually got the budget in place, because getting the 2020 budget was fine, and then the coronavirus pandemic happened, and all those deals were already agreed, so they couldn't, scrap them just because they've run out of money. Whereas going into 2021, the money isn't there at all, and people are, less willing to sign things off. So the grid might look a little different to what's actually announced during the off season.
Ticktum implied last week as well that budget seemed to be a bit of an issue when it came to securing a seat for next year. So I suspect that things have changed quite rapidly over the past few days for this announcement to come. But I'm going to hand it over to you, Elliot, now, because whilst I've been watching Formula 2, I did try to watch some Formula Regional European this weekend, but the weather. I'll hand everything Italy over to you.
Yeah. Well, Monza Rally kicked it off actually by having snow practically everywhere, which was unexpected. And then Vallelunga, which is maybe 100 kilometers away, might be getting that wrong, just rained non-stop. And you could see shots of the track, and there was just rivers of water flowing. During free practice on Wednesday, cars would go out, red flag after the first lap because cars were just flying off. Same thing happened on Friday. Saturday, they cancelled the first races of Sunday because the rain just wouldn't stop. And then it eventually did stop in time for the final race, the title decider, between the boy from Brazil, Gianluca Pedicciotto. I've done a way better impression of Ian. I've done it with him in the commentary box before. That was an awful one. Pedicciotto and Arthur Leclerc. 6 points was between them, and all Leclerc had to do really was overtake his teammate. And if he was going to win the race, that was all he needed to do because there's a 7-point margin between first and second. However, because of an engine fire in qualifying, he was starting at the back, and he ended up actually just spinning off into the gravel and ending his own race. So for the driver touted as the next Mick Schumacher, the next Charles Leclerc, the next Sebastian Vettel, I guess, for future Ferrari stars, Leclerc ended his season miserably. Whereas Petrov, who, as we've reported several times already, hasn't had the financial support, particularly from Ferrari, had to mid-season get the sponsorship deal from Shell to actually complete the season, and he ended up winning the title. And I think it was a brilliant job by Petrov. He's one of those drivers who you can talk to and you get a real good idea of how he actually drives a car and what his style is. I guess Leclerc is as well. They're both very clever drivers. But Petrov deserved it entirely. And the fact that Oliver Rasmussen, their teammate, who none of us would have tipped pre-season, actually stayed in contention until the final race, had the second race not been cancelled, was a brilliant job by him in the third Prema car. As for the fourth Prema, I'll have to look at, scroll down the timesheet, all 10 cars to the bottom. And Jamie Chadwick was driving that one, anonymous as usual, but did crash with Arthur in race one, which is a bit embarrassing. And then in the supporting F4 races, we had more rain, more crashes, more red flags, more drama.
More cancellations.
All the important things are wrapped up by that point. But we did have Johnny Edgar, Red Bull Jr., win the final race. Pretty spectacular as well. He was, kind of on a different tyre compound, it looked like at times. And he's going to FIA Formula 3 next year. He confirmed that literally as soon as he jumped out the car. And I think we already knew that already as well. And in the first race, I can't remember who's won now because it's been such a long weekend. But we had 33 cars, and I think 30 of them finished, which is incredible stuff by those drivers. That's all from Italy. What's the next country on the list?
We could cover Japan quickly, but we are running out of time because we can only afford the free Zoom call budget, if you will. So if you want to just whip through Japan quickly.
Former Scout budget will be increasing in the off season, hopefully. We're going to hopefully have a feature out from this Japan weekend because Toshiki Oyu, who was kind of like a midfielder in Super Formula Lights / Japanese Formula 3 over the last 2 years, won Sunday's Super Formula round. We had 2 rounds at Suzuka because the very first one got cancelled at the start of the season and dragged into this weekend. And Naoki Yamamoto, who is pretty much the master of Suzuka, dominated most of the practice sessions and qualifying. He won pretty convincingly on Saturday, if I recall correctly. And then Nick Cassidy took his first ever pole with Toms, which he did in his Condé days, but he's moved to Toms and he's finally taken a pole and was dominating the second race as well until his engine failed. You never see engine failures in Super Formula, so this is ridiculously unusual. And then Oyu went into the lead, and Oyu's crashed into his teammate twice already this season. He's crashed into Sasha Fenestras twice, I think. He's crashed into someone else twice on opening laps as well. So he's really under pressure. And Satoru Nakajima, team boss of Nakajima Racing, said he was very worried about how he's performing and he might lose his drive next year. And I think he secured his future with a pretty stunning defensive drive in the second race. Prior to the race, they doubled the overtaking boost system from 100 seconds to 200 seconds of use, which over a short, 30-lap race is, pretty substantial. He had Mirai Fukuzumi on his tail the whole time, and he didn't let him past. So brilliant job by him. And Takuma Sato was actually there at the circuit as well, because the Suzuka Racing School's there. He's the president of that. And he was very happy, sent a few congratulatory messages. We're hopefully going to get a few words from Takuma to describe how Oyu performed. But more from that is that Oyu's driving style is one of the strangest I've ever seen in single-seaters. It was very obvious when he did Euro Formula last year. It's almost like the opposite style to what you need for a higher downforce car. And in the supporting Super Formula Lights, Ritomo Miyata, Tom's protege, likely to replace Nick Cassidy next year when he goes to Formula E. He wrapped up the title with 2 wins, didn't spin out of race 2 of the 3 races. It was the first time we've seen really an unforced error from him since mid-2019. And that's pretty much secured his 2021 Super Formula future. So 2 drivers who, are the future of Japanese motorsport, potentially, for Honda and Toyota, respectively, doing brilliant jobs.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. And we've only got 5 minutes left, so I think that's a good time to talk about the features we've got on the website, because we've got obviously several features coming up. We've got a brilliant column from Peter Allen on Nikita Mazepan coming up, hopefully, and a few other bits as well, in addition to the Tsunoda Ogle piece as well.
Yep, Tsunoda Ogle will hopefully on Tuesday. Then we've got Ayu and Nakajima on Wednesday. We've got British F3 and British F4 season reviews coming up, although they might be shuffled back given how much F2 content we've got coming the next few days. We're going to be doing a write-up of this with a bit more insight on about Schumacher winning the title and Ilott losing it. And we've got loads of news to come by as well. We've obviously got the testing reports. We've got the post-race reaction from Jan Daravala, Dan Ticktum, Callum Ilott, Mick Schumacher, Robert Schwartzman, some of the other drivers down the field. We're hopefully going to get some response from René Rosen, team manager at Prema. Got the responses from Leclerc and Petrov for Formula Regional as well. Interview with Gabriele Mini, who's Italian F4 champion. We've got loads. Victor Martins talking about how ART kind of stimulated his mind in Formula 1 Euro Cup. Danish F4 champion news from Conrad Lawson. Potentially a review of High-Tech's first campaign in British F3, and Yiffier and Lucas Dunner kind of going off against each other on their Euro Formula title fight. And then next weekend, I think, is the last junior single, apart from Super Formula Lights finale, it will be the last junior single-seater report we do. So it's been a big send-off almost this weekend, has.
Yeah, and we're concluding it with the absolutely fantastic Formula Regional Japan at Autopolis. So I
it's
bet,
a few right there.
yeah, can't wait for that, can we? But we've also got loads of testing, as you mentioned before. Formula 2, FIA, Formula 3, they're in action. Formula Regional, Formula Renault's final ever test. Italian Formula 4 as well. So do keep an eye on formulascout.com for all of the results and everything from that. We've only got a few minutes remaining, so I think now is a good time to sign off. So we will be back soon with another Formula Scout podcast.
Adios.
Bye.